cleansing of the temple, in which Jesus is wielding a whip and driving the money changers out of the temple, is troubling for some people. It seems to be at odds with the otherwise non-violent character that the Gospels portray. To be sure, there had already been other would-be messiahs who were ready and willing to lead a bloody revolt against the Roman oppressors, but none of these messiahs had ever dared to attack the temple. Why would they? It was the center of their religious identity. So, what was Jesus doing? In 3 of the Gospels, this event happens at the start of Holy Week and is largely responsible for the events that follow, including his crucifixion. In the Gospel of John, however, this event occurs early in his ministry during one of their other trips to Jerusalem. In the temple courts, he found people selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and others sitting at tables exchanging money, so John wrote. So he made a whip of cords and drove out from the temple courts both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. To those who sold doves, he said, "Get these out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a market." It is hard for us to reconcile this image of Jesus going postal and lashing out, quite literally, with the image we have otherwise of a man who was gentle and forgiving, who was a teacher and a healer, not a rabble-rouser. This bothered even the early church fathers. Origen of Alexandria, who lived around the year 250 AD, was especially troubled by this event in the life of Jesus, and he found no comfort in the usual explanations for this event. For him, the story just didn't add up. First of all, he couldn't imagine why the merchants and money changers didn't just fight back. Surely they would have overwhelmed him and put an end to this disruption in their business. And who that received a blow from the scourge of small cords, Origen wrote, would not have attacked him and raised a cry and avenged himself with his own hand, especially when there was such a multitude present who might all feel themselves insulted by Jesus in the same way. People and institutions do fight back when they are threatened, and Jesus revealed himself here as a threat to their very existence. Jesus was not just saying that their system was corrupt and unjust, although arguably it might have been. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus is quoted as saying, "It's written, 'My house will be called a house of prayer,' but you are making it a den of robbers." That seems to imply so. In John's Gospel, however, Jesus does not stop to question their business practices. He just seems to believe that they do not belong there in the temple of God. "Stop turning my Father's house into a market," he told them. There is a time and a place for everything. And in this case, Jesus believed that the temple was no longer the place for them to be doing what they were doing. In fact, he also very pointedly called it his Father's house, and therefore his house now. They were trespassers, probably in more ways than one. Jesus was not just some reformer who desired to make the system more fair. He was a radical who wanted all of this to end in order to reshape that place into the house of prayer that it was always meant to be. Immediately, that was challenged. "What sign can you show us to prove your authority to do all this?" they asked. In other words, who are you? Who are you to say what this place should be? And in typical fashion for the Gospel of John, Jesus answered very cryptically, "Destroy this temple, and I will raise it again in 3 days." They had, after all, asked him for a sign, and that would be a pretty dramatic sign. Of course, they thought he was talking about bricks and mortar, but Jesus was actually talking to them about his true identity and how it was that one day they would see him rise as the Son of God. Up until that moment, temple worship and animal sacrifice had been the means by which they related to their God. which was pretty much the way that every land sort of related to whatever god they chose. You made a sacrifice to appease your god and or beg for a favor. But from now on, that would no longer be the case for them, because Jesus himself would become now their temple. And it was only through him that their prayers could ascend to heaven. Moreover, the system of animal sacrifices was no longer to be required, because from now on, Jesus himself would be the sacrifice, the only sacrifice needed, that would forever thereafter bring them redemption by faith alone. The whole temple thing was simply coming to an end now. In fact, the temple itself would soon be reduced to just rubble, and that was okay, because now they were going to have a temple not made by hands, one that is eternal in the heavens. Jesus is that temple. It is to him that we must go now if we want our prayers to be heard. So that is one way to read and understand this strange event. It was not just house cleaning, it was a total teardown and replacement of everything that had been before. If you are still troubled by that image of Jesus physically whipping people and causing them pain, then you might also take some solace in the fact that there really is another way to read this. From the words here, it seems more likely that the whip he created was only used to move the animals out of the temple, not the people. He overturned tables and scattered coins and, quote, drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He told those who sold doves to get these out of here. And when he was done, there were some people still there, obviously. Otherwise, they would not have been able to have a conversation. Origen figured that out. And if he is right, then Jesus was not a man of violence driven by zeal, as portrayed in some paintings. Instead, as Origen put it, to think moreover of the Son of God taking the small cords in his hands and plaiting a scourge out of them for this driving out from the temple, does it not bespeak audacity and temerity and even some measure of lawlessness? Origen could not believe that Jesus was just some lawless hooligan. He was, after all, the embodiment of the law and the prophets. In the end, the whip would be used on him, not the other way around. Origen also saw that whip as a kind of allegory for our life now as Christian believers. The temple, he said, is the soul skilled in reason. The whip is Jesus' word plaited out of doctrines of demonstration and rebuke. The ox is earthly things. The poor sheep are senseless and brutal things. And the doves are empty and unstable thoughts. In essence, therefore, for him, this all became a metaphor for the way in which Jesus can continually help us clear our lives of all that stuff that does not belong there. His words are the whip and the means of doing so. They have the ability to touch the mind and the soul that is skilled in reason. He alone can drive out all of our unstable thoughts as well, and our desire for earthly things. And then, instead of being driven by senseless brutality, we can become instead the sheep of his pasture, following his voice only. You got to admit that sounds better. And you got to admit your heart and soul and mind could probably use a little spring cleaning about now. No doubt over the years it has become cluttered, and you are preoccupied now with all the wrong things. Maybe we were meant to become a house of prayer as well, but we have all forgotten that. So today might be a good time to begin to clean house, to change our ways, to refocus our lives, so that our life can become more about the things that really matter to God. If you think that maybe that time has come for you, then why not let Jesus in so that he can help you clean house? Be safe, and God bless you.